Perfect. Great. So we are starting the meeting off now. Just getting everyone on the same page about the budget cuts. And people are still trickling in, so we'll just give this overview and then start our discussion. So basically, what's going on is a result of this new November 2023 financial plan update. It's through a provision in the budget called the Program to Eliminate the Gap Peg, which basically allows the mayor to announce to agencies to reduce their budget. And so in September, it was announced that there'd be a 5% citywide government budget cut. And then this was further specified to be 5% from each of the agencies. So not necessarily a 5% overall, but a 5% in each agency. And so what we're going to be talking about tonight is essentially DSNY's cuts. So what DSNY put forward as the items to cut to reach that 5%. So we have two slides here outlining what those cuts were. But basically, some of them are things that were ongoing. So like civilian hiring freezes and other sort of administrative things. But some of the bigger items, as you can see here, I don't really know what this increase in efficiency of waste collection operations is, but below that, there were plans to build out community composting. So any additions to community composting were discontinued, as well as eliminating city funding for all community composting programs. In addition to that, the curbside is still in place for Queens and for Brooklyn, but there's a delay for the rollout in the Bronx, Staten Island, and then obviously Manhattan, which was the last one to get it. As well as some of these training programs. And then the next slide is a reduction in some of the funding that the commissioner had just started to increase cleanliness of the Get Stuff Clean program, if you will. So a lot of this is additional services, this outreach and communications as well, solid waste management plan consultant. These are all what was put forward to be cut. And I can put in the chat, this is the link to the full document. These are just from DSNY, but each agency has a line item. Oh, there's no sound. Can anyone else hear me? Everyone? Anyone?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, great.
I can hear you.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to put in the chat. This is I just saw I have that's up. I was talking to no one. So this is the full November plan, but these are the most relevant parts as they are what is the proposed cuts to DSNY. So some additional information on this. This is some quotes from a joint statement from the city council speaker, Adrian Adams, as well as the chair of the finance committee related to this. They are of the belief that this is too blunt and not the prudent or sole choice. And they're saying that they're going to be voicing their concerns and negotiate with the administration further. This is more about the overall approach. This 5% per agency is what they're focusing on. And then this quote from Councilmember Nurse, who we know is the chair of the Sanitation Commission, is essentially saying that council members may be proposing new legislation specifically related to community composting, and that Sanitation Commission, as well as others on City Council, are going to be fighting as hard as possible to restore funding. So that's kind of the landscape that we find ourselves in. A lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight will relate to SWAB's response, and how we want to respond to that. The two previous quotes, there's obviously an audience in City Council. There's ongoing initiatives, things that we can do on our own. But that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. But before delving into some of those items, I just wanted to pause and open the floor for any discussion folks have about these cuts, anything directly. I mean, that's a very broad brush in terms of what's going on. So folks who work for community composting organizations, if they want to chime in. I know I'm currently doing the Master Composter course, and that's something that's being impacted by this. So I've gotten tons of emails about how if funding's not restored, that program is going to be completely canceled. So just if folks have additional details they want to share.
Ryan?
Yes.
I had a question. So if we continue curbside, if it continues in Queens and Brooklyn, but there's no outreach and funding for it, what about like if they need new bins or flyers or we for communications, we talk about new tabletops and things like that. Can the program go forward if there's no support, or is it just basically just stall, or I shouldn't say stall, or just remain as it is?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So as we saw with the rollout in Queens and what was going on with the rollout in Brooklyn is there was a lot of outreach, the door-to-door knocking. I mean, I'm assuming that they would still do mailers, but my understanding is that the entire budget for the outreach, which is what they've said made the rollout in Queens successful, it would be cut. So they would technically be rolling out pickup, but the outreach that they did in Queens and Brooklyn would not, to my understanding, would not be done under this proposed cut. And so the question of, how people would get the bins, how they would even know what to do, those are all do you want to see a hand raised?
I'd like to say, oh, I didn't raise my hand, but
I have many things to say, but not as the representative for CB2, just as me, Benji, who's a composter for many years in 2 community composting sites. Number one, that is already affecting us. We're running out of browns in one of the 2 spaces where I volunteer. One is Rusty Wheelbarrow Farm. Basically, I created that space. And I tried to order browns for both spaces, Woodside Sunnyside Composting and Rusty Wheelbarrow Farm. Usually big reuse, they have a form you can fill in, and we can get browns delivery once a month. And that's already canceled that. So this is like the real effect on community composting sites. And then there's another thing. So there was Dan was asking a question, kind of, or a remark about new brown beans, like if somebody needs a new brown bean and etc. The thing that we need to all understand is that the brown beans is not a good sustainable solution. There are plenty of reasons why. Number one, so there is a good thing of the brown beans is that they lock, and they're not like garbage bags in the streets. So from the rat problem perspective, the brown beans are a pretty good solution. But if we're pushing sustainability a little bit further, like for example, greenhouse gases emission through the transport of the food wastes, that's not too good because it's going to be picked up by garbage truck, go to triage center, loaded into bigger trucked somewhere out of the city for much of the waste, especially that now the methane production facility has been closed. And then for the food waste that's going to be processed into methane, there are plenty of spaces that cannot use all the methane produced. So at best, it's burned and flared out. So you have CO2 that gets into the atmosphere. At worst, like in the Newton facility, in Newton Creek facility, it's just vented into the atmosphere. So that's kind of the exact opposite of sustainability. And then if some of this waste makes it to industrial style composting facilities, there is no regulation forcing them to measure the emissions they have. So they might produce, I mean, there is data showing that the compost that's produced from the farmer or gardener perspective is pretty bad quality compost with not very rich in nutrient and so on, kind of hydrophobic, and like any bag of compost that you buy in Home Depot and etc., it's usually pretty bad. That comes from industrial composting facilities. And because they are not measuring what is their output of greenhouse gases and stuff like this, it might be just like the methane production facilities, where it's actually the opposite of sustainability, and at best, it might be not worse than a landfill that produces tons of methane as well. So, yeah. So, and I'm sorry, I took a lot of time to say all of that, and really, I'm saying that as me, a composter who has an idea of what's going on, and not as a representative of CB2. Thank you.
So, can I just seek some clarification here? Thank you for that. But are you saying that when we take the time to separate out our food waste and put it in a separate brown container, it really isn't doing anything that we think it's supposed to do, that at the end of the day, it's no better than just having thrown it in the regular garbage can? Is that what I'm hearing? I don't know.
It is definitely better from the perspective of rats, because these are in containers that are maybe not completely rat-proof, but that are better than any regular container. I mean, than the garbage bags that are just piled up on the streets, right? For that, it's definitely better. For the rest, I think the right answer is we don't really know. I've heard, and there's a couple of articles circulating. I forgot from what news outlets, relating people putting how do you call them, like the trackers, GPS trackers you can put in things in case you lose them, or that shows that it doesn't go where we think it goes. And some of it goes into facilities like methane production facilities, which are not the best solution. It might not, like if it's well designed and that actually the methane that's produced is used to make electricity out of it, or to cook food, or to put into, I don't know, to some use, that's not horrible. But community composting or local composting is so much better because it doesn't produce these greenhouse gases that will leak out into the atmosphere, not nearly as much, right? Even if you do bad small-scale composting, it's just too small to produce a significant amount of methane, for example, and nitric oxide, right? In the industrial-style composting facilities, it's really difficult to say because it's not measured, right? So it's a more complex answer than it's bad, right? It's probably better than landfill, right? But how much better it is, it's difficult to tell. And I'm sorry if I misrepresented that earlier.
Well, not a very pretty picture, but thank you.
Yes, and Kat, if you want to ask your question.
Hi, thanks. I mean, of course, I'm really so beyond disappointed, depressed, I don't know, outraged about all of these announcements of late with the cuts, especially to the community composting program. I do worry a little bit about the framing. I know Jenny had brought up in an email string earlier today about the framing of, everything else bad except for community composting, which I think I'm sorry, I misplaced the person who, Ben, like Benjamin was just saying, there's grades of good, I guess, and going to the digesters is you know, okay, better than dumping all your food in the trash. There is some positivity to it if it can be shown that it's actually being used for energy, which seems like it's stopping and starting, and you know, they have planned underway for a long time, launch it, that it doesn't work, and now maybe it's working again. I've read an article to that effect. But certainly I mean, like everybody here, I think there's such an importance for community composting to continue, but maybe not to be in my opinion, that we should frame everything else as, you know, bad and that's the only good thing. I don't agree with some of the flyers that I've seen on that. I think it's good to get people trained at the very least to be separating and to see our organics as a useful material that can be used for something else, as recycling, you know, maybe organics recycling rather than, you know, composting. Maybe the messaging has not been, it definitely has not been accurate since the start, especially for where the brown bins are going. So those are just some of the things that I'm thinking about, and a lot of work done. I feel like it's COVID all over again, like a lot of work done, a lot of hard work put in by many people, and the rug being pulled out again. It's hard to continue progress and get toward these goals when the rug keeps being pulled out. So yeah, preaching to the choir, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you. Other comments, and for folks who've just joined, we are talking about what the budget cuts are, the kind of background framing of what's going on, specifically what was cut. So if folks are on the ground, want to talk about what's impacting their current experience, as well as points like that about how we want to move forward. We have a few agenda items to go through in terms of specifics, but just if folks have other comments about the cuts and how they're seeing them in their work now, would be to share.
Ryan,
Yeah.
can we have folks, experts, folks that's knowledgeable come in to speak to us in regards to exactly what happens when we put organics in the brown bin? Because I'm hearing all of these different, well, maybe, and oh, I read this article, and all of that. But certainly the waste goes to Disney. So Disney should be able to tell us what they're doing. So I think rather than all of the reading the papers and coming up with your thoughts as to what's happening, and it could be right, let's bring in the expert. Let's bring someone in to SWAB and tell us exactly what's going on. Those are my thoughts. I agree. Going to the landfill is not good, but we also know maybe there's some other elements of what's happening that's also not good. But we need to know so that as we advocate, we know for sure what we're advocating for.
Yeah,
those are my thoughts.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think so. Yes, someone knows the issue. So the conversations that we've had with DSMY as the 4 chairs of the SWABs has very much been, it seems like, and this is beyond DSMY as well, co-digestion has come up in a number of places. The Plan NYC process, a lot of sustainability things, they'll tag that on. So it is kind of across the Adams administration, this idea of diverting organics to co-digestion is a solution. They've said, and Rhonda and Matt, please chime in. There's a concern that there's not going to be capacity to truly compost the organics collected through curbside, which is why they've wanted to push for anaerobic digestion. We also don't have capacity to anaerobically digest all of the material that we're collecting, so it's not like there's that capacity and we don't have it. But yeah, Matt, I'll pass it off to you.
Thanks, Ryan. I just want to point out that Ryan is correct. We don't currently have the capacity to compost all of the material that we have, nor anaerobically digest all the material that we have set out in the residential waste stream. But the issue is how much of what we have available is actually being taken out of the waste stream currently and finding its way into being source separated into brown bins, smart bins, or food scrap drop-offs. So it's really a small fraction of the material that we potentially could be composting or digesting. So I think we have to be very honest and realistic about what we will eventually wind up with. We certainly have been diligently recycling in this city since 1989, and we've never gotten above 20% in terms of diversion of the total waste stream or materials recovery, somewhere around 50% in some categories. So is it reasonable to expect that we're going to wake up sometime in the future and 100% of all organics will have separated diligently out by our city residents, and we won't be able to handle it? That is completely unrealistic, right? It's pure fantasy. So will we get to 20%? Yeah, someday we will, but it's not going to be tomorrow. It's probably not going to be next year. So we have enough composting capacity right now to handle a lot of what we're already collecting. We're just not using it. And the second part of this issue is, if we're going to spend billions of dollars of borrowed funds or federal aid, which we're never going to really see, but let's say we can borrow the money, the capital expenditure necessary to build out a wastewater recovery facility infrastructure to process all of our organic material. We won't have enough organic material to justify that spend, I don't think, anytime soon. So it makes sense for us to start with compost first. And whatever is left over, we can't handle, goes to anaerobic digestion capacity that we already have. The last point I want to make, and we have to remember this, is that the biosolids that come out of the process of co-digestion at wastewater treatment plants is toxic. It is something that has to be disposed of in a landfill and in an incinerator. And this is why the EPA has recently upgraded and updated their chart to say that co-digestion of organics is just as bad as putting it in the landfill. So those are my points. So these are things that we really, these are not like speculation. These are like, this is like facts that we can really not open to a lot of debate, but so that's where I think we need to be kind of on board with. So Brian, thanks for letting me just chat for a minute.
Totally. Yeah, Benjamin, wanna chime in?
Oh, yeah, I was saying that I was going to say that what Matthew already said about the waste, the sludge coming out of the methane digesters. So yeah, I didn't need that. Sorry, I raised my hand to thinking as like, oh, I want to add that to what Matthew said, but he already said it. Never mind me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one other point is, we were rolling out the curbside compost, one, to make sure that we're targeting people, but also for the capacity issue. So that was kind of this, there wouldn't have been capacity to pick everything up curbside, assuming we got everything. And so that should be going hand in hand with building up capacity for processing. And it's then becomes a policy decision about whether you're anaerobically digesting or composting it. So I think that there's definitely there's ways that could have been improved even without these budget cuts, and now these budget cuts are threatening it even more, as like the community composting is one of, if not the only place where this material is actually being composted. And so that's important. I'm going to move us on. We're going to be having a presentation from the People's Plan. Let me pull up our slide. So basically, thank you for everyone for thinking about this and voting over the holiday break. We voted to go ahead and reach out to the People's Plan. Bilal had a conversation with them, advocating for including, so they're taking the approach of organizing around, oh great, and she's in the waiting room right now, on all of the cuts. But so Bilal's conversation was about advocating for including composting specifically in their messaging. So like in addition to their advocacy around cuts more generally, talking about the importance both environmentally and also from an environmental justice perspective, why these cuts should be included in their platform. And the conversation was also about how we can support them and work together to respond to this. So our first item now is kind of just a follow-up on that. So Bilal, I don't know if you wanted to give a summary or if we just want to pass it right off to talk about the People's Plan, but I'll pause here if you want to add anything.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm on my computer. Yes. So I had a very productive conversation with Sister Zara Nasir, who is the executive director for the People's Plan and NYC, and she's graciously to be with us tonight over discussing a little bit about a summary of what is the People's Plan for those who are not aware, but also how they can help us advocate for community composting with the sharing of the information that we have already available. So I figure it'd be good for the SWAB to hear from herself, introduce herself, allow us to understand more about the People's Plan, and also go from here in collaborating to make sure that community composting gets added to their platform of initiatives that they are trying to campaign to raise awareness around the cuts. She brought her up to speed with how dire our situation is with community composting. So so we're honored to have her in the space.
Hey everyone. I think that's my cue to talk. So if it's not, you should tell me otherwise. But hi, I'm Zara. Sorry, I'm just like lounging on my couch. But happy to talk to you all. So yeah, I talked to Bilal yesterday. I had kind of heard about the composting situation on the news, but I didn't actually realize like how dire it was and how many jobs will be lost and organizations might have to shutter their doors if the mayor's cuts continue. So yeah, I just am appreciative to Bilal in getting in touch through Sandy Nurse, who we also work with just on budget organizing in general. So I'm happy to tell you a little bit about People's Plan. I can tell you kind of like what we have planned for the next couple weeks. A lot of it is actually around the council hearing that's happening on December 11th. So we can talk about that a little bit. And I can also tell you more about just like what we're thinking about for the next several months. But there's a longer version of this, but the shorter version of People's Plan is that we've been working on budget advocacy for the last I would say like year and a half-ish, like since the first round of budget cuts, when the mayor came into office. We weren't like set up to do that, but it just seemed like it was where a lot of work was needed because of the way that this mayor is kind of oriented around austerity, because of some of the federal funding that is like now drying up, and just like other issues that were happening with the budget. A lot of folks got activated after the school budget cuts that happened in 2022, in the summer of that, and we led basically like a pretty robust bird dogging program against the mayor. I think we bird dogged him like 20 times within like, I want to say like a 9-week period. So it was a lot. He did not reverse the school cuts, but was a lot more hesitant to make them later that year. And so some of the schools were able to stay being held harmless last fall as a result. And then, we kind of led our like first real campaign around the people's budget, I would say this year, and really tried to get the mayor to, if he was going to carry forward his cuts, like we wanted to make sure that New Yorkers knew that they were his cuts, and he would wear them on his neck if he was going to do them. And really, I think like we were successful in demonstrating how unpopular the cuts were last time around. And we won back funding for libraries, for CUNY, for some other smaller kind of programs. But overall, like there was still a lot of budget cuts this last budget cycle as well. And so these November plan cuts are, I think, the 5th round of cuts that the mayor's making to the city budget since he's come in office. We just think he has like, personal interest in cutting the budget. There's also some like folks who I think are like ideologically bent towards austerity at OMB, who are kind of like running the ship, frankly. So I think that's what we're seeing here. I think we expected the November plan to be not good, but the extent to which it's really, really, really devastating is hard to just grapple with, to be honest with you. Our coalition is, and I'll actually share the website. Sorry, I should do that now. Our coalition is made up of grassroots organizations that, work with homeless New Yorkers, with parents, with students, with CUNY faculty, with different like ethnic and racial groups around the city. So I'll share About Us page here. That's our steering committee. And I told Bilal this, that like, we are not like, other than our steering committee, like anyone can work with us. We don't have like a solidified membership list as of at the moment of organizations, but we've worked with like many, many, many organizations in the past to try to work to reverse budget cuts or to fight for budget advocacy. And honestly, it sometimes it just depends on what issue is rising to be the most urgent. So last time around, it was libraries, it was CUNY, it was childcare. And so we worked with a lot of those groups. We're pretty nimble. We're very flexible in like who we work with. But we are trying to build a very big coalition around challenging the mayor's cuts and really like making sure that he is tied to them in particular, just to like really make it clear that like it's not a migrant crisis, quote unquote. It's not really a fiscal crisis. There are no budget deficits in the current fiscal year. So like, in our opinion, like these cuts are not necessary at the current moment. And I think the other thing that's really important is that any big changes like this should not be happening during a budget modification cycle. They should, if the mayor is to propose them, it should be happening through the regular budget cycle, which is like January through June, in which like the budget is usually resolved by June. So it feels inappropriate and like completely skeezy for it to happen right now. And so I can talk a little bit about like quickly, I think like what we have planned. We are like just, we're like small but mighty. Like I'm the only person who works at People's Plan. We rely on like coalition members to really provide us with, the muscle to like actually get the word out. But the couple things that we have planned, right? So we did an action the day that the cuts were announced, which was, I can't remember now, but like whatever that Friday was after the Thursday announcement. We had a big action that day with U of T, with elected officials, with other community partners just around the cuts that were happening. And then we have another action coming up on at 9 a.m. on, actually I can send you all the invite, even though I haven't circulated this yet with other people. But we're doing an action, a presser, potentially with the Progressive Caucus on the 11th, Monday, 9 a.m. It's an hour before the council hearing on the budget modification starts. So we're going to try to gather folks then. Then we will also be mobilizing folks to try to testify at that hearing. I'm sure people have testified, many people have testified before, but if you haven't, usually it takes like a couple of hours, and then like, within 2 hours, like they start hearing public testimony. You can also write testimony. I can share like the council website where you can sign up for testimony. It's the finance hearing on the 11th at 10 a.m. So those are the two big upcoming things that we're trying to mobilize folks for. We also have an action tool. I actually, after talking to Bilal, just added composting as more of a central demand, just because we had kind of talked about schools and libraries and other things, but it's just because of how dire the situation is. I just want to be clear that we're going to be trying to prioritize things that are going to have an immediate impact on, whatever the program might be. So I'm just going to share this in here, and I think the big, I actually am going to share one more thing, which is that, we're trying to see if any of our partners are willing to do or are able to do like phone banking or, other kinds of like field activities. DSA is going to be doing canvassing in Flatbush and in the upper Manhattan, I forget where. And so there's some field activity happening. DSA is one of our steering committee members. We're going to also see if other people can do phone banking or canvassing. But the other thing that we're working on is just trying to disseminate our messaging and just make sure that like as many organizations as possible are informed about what's happening, using the same talking points. Again, really pitting all of this on the mayor. He's embroiled in scandals right now. It's like not the appropriate budget season for these big changes to be happening. And so our thing is that people should really be trying to combat this narrative that like this has to happen now and that it's necessary in the first place. So I'm just sharing like all these different things that our folks are working on. I think that's it for now. We also we're going to be doing an organizing call probably next Wednesday at 3 p.m., just a Zoom phone call. And I can share the RSVP once I have it. Or honestly, you can just, I don't have like an RSVP right now, and I'm trying to, so you can just email me if you want to be a part of those organizing calls moving forward, but this is my email. So if you all like want to stay connected and kind of just keep up to date to on what we're doing, that's like a good place to join as well. Yeah, I think that's it. So I can take any questions, or Bilal, I don't know if you want me to cover anything else based on what we talked about before, but I think that's like most of it.
Yeah, thank you again, Zara, for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. If we can also talk a little bit now about some of the things that we talked about last night, as far as how we can integrate community composting into the people's plan, and moving forward with those things.
Yeah. I would also echo the thanks for including community composting. It's obviously something that we care very much about, but definitely see it as part of a larger picture. So I'm glad that you do as well. And I can say for us, and there's two other SWAB chairs on here as well. I won't speak for them, but just offering that we're more than happy to share out all of these things. We each have a listserv, which includes our members as well as folks who kind of follow the work that we're doing. So anytime you have anything, as the bare minimum, we're able to send out info to our folks, as well as taking a more active role in some things as well, but just offering to start anything that you all have that you want volunteers for. This is definitely a channel that we'd be willing to share info out. And I see Mary has her hand raised.
Yes, thank you so much, Bilal and Zara, for the work that you've done on this. I guess my question, Zara, is in terms of where we are right now with the budget and the mayor's powers and the council's powers, where should we be targeting our efforts in terms of communications? What's possible and what isn't possible as you see it?
Yeah, I think we're in a really tough situation, partly because, as I said before, like the council tends to have more power when this is like a normal, not in the budget modification process, but like in the like January through June budget negotiation, and then the June adoption process. Not that they always use it, but this is something that like we are pushing them to do, which is like, and honestly, I don't want to say, like, I think everybody needs to push as much as possible until January, but I actually think no matter what happens, we should have a conversation in January, because they do have a power of budget amendments, so they can move money from one place to another. And I don't have it yet, but I will. We are writing a memo that kind of describes what that power looks like. And I used to work at the council, so like I'm very interested in them using their full power and not like obscuring it and putting it back on the mayor. So what I am trying to say is that like January through June, they actually have a little bit more power than they're accustomed to using. They usually like will try to negotiate and then like will pass whatever the mayor gives them in June. And what we're trying to get them to do the post January is to like actually think about budget amendments, where they would want to move money from, where would they want to move money to. I think between now and the end of December, obviously, like I think the primary target is, of course, the mayor. And one thing that I didn't mention is that like we do bird dog him. We've slowed down a little bit because the colder months are harder to mobilize people in that way. But I think we're going to be doing it at least once. There's a date that I know that we're going to be bird dogging. And so if people were interested in trying to confront him about composting, and like especially people who are going to lose their jobs. If they wanted to confront him, we can provide that outlet. But that being said, like I'm trying to say, obviously the most power is in the mayor. He's also like very difficult to move. And so like just being realistic about that. The other piece of this is that the council does vote on the budget modification. So the 11th is a hearing on the budget modification. That is not required by the charter, but they are, the mayor is required by charter to submit any big changes that he makes to the budget to the city council through a budget modification. It's being introduced to the council on the 6th. And then they have 30 days. There's a 30-day cycle. Again, trying to write this all down. We'll share it with people when I have it, but you can also take notes, and I think it's helpful to know they have a 30-day cycle in which they can do 3 things. So they can either vote on the modification and pass it. They can vote on the modification and like vote it down. So not pass it, or they can do nothing. This is what's the most frustrating thing, is that they can do nothing and it'll pass anyway. And that's what they've tended to do. So like last year, there was also cuts, but they were like, well, we're so mad that we're not even going to vote on it. Not everybody knows what happens is that like it passes anyway. So they're kind of feigning outrage, like, oh, we won't even consider this. We won't even vote on it because of how bad it is. But in honesty, like what happens is that it just passes anyway if they don't do anything. And if they were to vote it down, it gets a little complicated, and I'm happy to talk about that. But it's not just like, oh, everything is reversed and like everything goes back to how it was before the budget mod came to them. Basically, what happens is that like the mayor has just a lot of power in the budget. He can spend down agencies. He can like spend a lot less than is in the adopted budget. What it would refrain him from doing is moving that money elsewhere. So it would curtail his power. And our view is that we all should advocate for them to vote it down if he doesn't roll back some of the cuts. And I think composting and library hours and summer rising, which are the 3 things that I've identified that have like kind of like an immediate, there's hours being cut, or like less kids will get programming. We're in programs right now. Or obviously like 120 people in composting jobs will lose their jobs. Like these are things that have an immediate effect by January. I think there's a potential like, they should maybe leverage that and say, we're going to vote down the mod unless you restore some of these things. So I think there's a play here with the council. So it's a super long answer, but I think it's hard given that there's like about a month left until the mod passes anyway. So I would say equal energy to the mayor and the council is how we're doing it. And I think like just not letting the council off the hook is a really important part of how we're thinking about it.
Can I just make a couple of comments? So I actually work for Queens Public Library, and we have already implemented the cuts, right? And we are now preparing for the second 5% cut that will go into effect in January. So with the city council, they're not just looking at this 5% peg in November, they're also going to be looking at a 5% peg in January. We've been told to expect a 3rd one in April. So there are cuts. The libraries have closed their doors on Sundays. That's happened. There are, other cuts that are being planned right now. And DSNY is not going to get these additional cuts. This is the only cut that they would be getting. I don't know that it would be overturned by the city council. I have not seen that happen before. But I think another strategy that we need to think about as a SWAB is about advocating with the Department of Sanitation, because they have a 5% mandatory cut. If it doesn't get changed, they have the ability to change how they cut that 5%. And so I think, yes, we want to make our voices heard so that people understand that we're not happy about losing community composting and why. But in terms of practicalities, it's DSNY that's going to control whether or not there is funding available for community composting. And so it's educating them about other strategies or other ways or other cost savings that would maintain community composting. And, I'm glad everyone is advocating and making their voices heard. I will say that I am not that, I don't know that it's going to have much of an effect. And of course, we're looking at these other draconian cuts that are happening in other places. But I feel like a really smart strategy is about speaking with DSNY and advocating with them, because again, they have the power to change how those cuts are implemented in their agency. And the city council, whether or not, or the mayor, whether or not there are additional cuts, DSNY can still control how that 5% is allocated across their, their huge budget. And that is the only cut so far that they're going to be getting. So.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And I think there's definitely a both and here where we don't want to lose the thread on the DSNY specifics. And this is definitely something we can, for the bigger picture in the people's plan, we can also be sharing things for folks who are interested. I have two hands. So Benjamin first and then Reb Thorbs.
Yeah, super quickly, Zara, would it be worth your time to contact, because there are not just a handful of community composting sites, to contact them directly to say, hey, this is what we are doing. Can you send that to your mailing list / social media to reach out to more people? Like, again, I'm involved in 2 sites, so I'm absolutely going to share all of what you already shared about the different campaigning things, but that might help, like, people who don't know about People's Plan might be in support of People's Plan, and using the community composting sites and community garden that are affected by this cut might help reaching out to more people to support them.
Yeah, I mean, if there's, if you all might have a list that I don't have, and again, like, not just for the shorter term, but in the longer term, we'd love to like build with people just so that, like, we have more power collectively than any one individual issue has, right? So like the schools folks, the CUNY folks, like, we all have like a vested interest in this right now. I would love to talk to other people. I just don't have the same contacts that you guys do. So if there's a way to do that, I would, and I'm happy to like write something that you can like forward to people or whatever makes sense. But I'll take your advice on however to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and definitely something that we'd be able to do, particularly with the new language that you've included in your material about composting. Like, that's definitely something that we can send to not only our full SWAB lists, but individually as well, reaching out and saying, this advocacy group has included community composting. I know a lot of people who are in the community composting space are frustrated and don't know what to do. So that could be a channel for them as well. So that's a good idea. I'll follow up with you afterwards about how we want to do that. Rev Thorbs had her hand raised, and then Bilal after.
Zara, have you considered doing interviews with the media in regards to how composting is going to be affected, how many jobs will be lost, how many, how this is going to affect the city on a whole?
We haven't. I think we could probably help, like, get folks. We have, a lot of our organizations do a lot of media work or have like connections to media, and I just don't feel like the way that we work is like we're kind of, the triage. So we're like sending people who do this work, or like who are very, very well informed about composting, for example, which I would think is you all, and like can help you strategize around that or connect.
So I say that because you have this information about the cuts, especially with composting. This is information that as a community board, we haven't heard yet. DSNY has not come to us and said, this is what's going to be cut. This is what they're proposing. And so the community needs to know, folks they're just learning how to use the brown bin. And now the whole program is being cut, or most of the programs are being cut. And I think it would be good, it would be a good situation if the community, if New York City was made aware. So whoever it is that you're connected to, they need to be putting out a PSA. They need to be getting an interview that'll run on Channel 2 News, Channel 4, Channel 7, to just enlighten everyone about what's actually going on and what these cuts are going to look like.
Yeah, totally. We can definitely include that in our messaging. And if you look at our messaging doc, like we're asking all of our groups to do like op-eds. We're trying to get Justin Brannon, who's like the council finance chair, to like do an op-ed. So we're trying to get like our folks to go out there and like talk to the media more. If that's something that like you all also want to collaborate on, happy to do that. I myself like don't often go on, like I'm a lot more behind the scenes, but
that. But for those that you're dealing with, for those that you're talking to, that we don't get to talk to, this is information that is not out. We're not aware of this. The same thing with the libraries. We're not aware of the specific things that are being cut, because now we need to turn to our city council people and start saying, hey, we need you to push to save this, because people don't know the details of what's being cut, how it's being cut. If Susan didn't say right now, I wouldn't know that the libraries are closed on Sundays. Now I need to have a conversation. What else is being cut? Because we have libraries that are struggling in some places.
Oh, sorry.
You know, for the cuts to be implemented now in 2023, this is a delicate dance, because we have quality of life issues that are hardly being addressed now. And we need to know, you know, how hard do we have to put our foot on the gas? It's on the gas anyway, but now we have to really make sure things get done before January rolls in.
yeah, for sure. I will share like our analysis in the chat. This is like very just based on the budget documents. So folks, oh, I might have screwed that up a little bit. Oh, no, it's fine. If folks can just like not you know, like if you want to make a copy of it and like mess around with it, that's fine. Just want to make sure that like our stuff doesn't get too moved around. But this is like based on the November plan documents. And then the messaging doc that I sent you also has like a bigger list of cuts. And that's like, we're just honestly, like Reverend, like we are also, this is just like, what's terrible about New York City democracy is like, our system is so broken that we also have to be like, hey, what's happening? Like, hey, like library folks, what's getting cut? Like the city is not telling us either. So it's like all of us communicating and talking to each other. That's how we're finding out. But yes, point taken. We can definitely like make sure that our folks are amplifying all of these different cuts that are happening.
And we also have another topic that we need to talk about that we haven't been talking about here. I know this is a composting topic, but we have a 5G issue that's just about to become overwhelming. The 5G polls that are going up, and the SWABs, the SWABs, they need to be boots on the ground. We need the SWABs involved because it's going to be overwhelming. Queens is going to get the second largest number of towers if we don't say or do something. Manhattan being the first, Board 8. And so we need environmental justice to be involved. We need all of you to be involved. This is something else, because the question is, with all these cuts, is that particular item going to be cut as well? Is that going to be taken off the table? And that's something we need to be asking as well.
Great, thank you. Bilal.
Thank you, Ryan. The chat, well, first question, is the chat being saved? I know Zara put a lot of links in the chat. Okay, thank you. Those links can be shared to everyone who's present, who's now on the call, so therefore everyone can be informed about what took place tonight. The other thing I want to like to just mention, and you know, to us, that I think the importance of coalition building here is crucial. that whatever information that we have, we share. Whatever information Zara has, she shares, because we're all in this fight together. The reason why, again, echoing why we reached out to the People's Plan, was to get community composting on their bucket list of items, because this affects everyone. And a lot of the composters, those who are regular citizens who also utilize the library, who also utilize 3K program, WDOE. I mean, this is an issue that this is a family of issues that are interwoven and interrelated. So we want to have as many people who can voice our concerns and echo them. But ultimately, I did catch the point that we do need to have a discussion with the SNY, or get our points to the SNY. I do agree with that. And I also want to echo that, we want to use our positioning and our testimonies to get to the mayor and to get to the Speaker of the Council. The Speaker of the Council was favorable for Skip the Stuff campaign. That went through the city council without, much of a pushback after she got on board with it. And I really think that we have to utilize, everything that's on the table. We shouldn't leave nothing off the table. That is why I mentioned in the email thread that, the borough president, we need to know what his stance is in all of this. And specifically with community composting, because this affects his constituents. This affects, his neighborhood, the community that he was born and raised for, that he has pride about. And it's something that, we don't want to be a powerless group. We don't want to be a powerless group. We want to utilize the positioning that we have within the borough president's office to really utilize his platform to get to these other people as well, to help bring our message to the council, to help bring a message to the mayor, and to the Speaker, Adrian Adams, and to Justin Brennan, and to those other parties that need to hear it. I think that's crucial, because right now we don't know, or we haven't heard, what his position is in any of this. And that's we need to know. We need to know that we're not fighting this by ourselves, because that's what it seems like right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. To fill folks in, the plan is, having this conversation tonight. There's a few things that we want to vote on, but the idea is that after this, I'll write up everything from our meeting to send to the borough president, the mayor, also the speaker, Justin Brennan, as well as Sandy Nurse, just clarifying this is SWAB's position, and asking particularly of the borough president what his stance is, how we can partner to get the word out. That's kind of our goal coming out of this. Miri, I see your hand raised. You're muted.
We asked the borough president before to ask Adrian Adams to hold a hearing on Skip the Stuff. It wasn't, but instantly almost, that there was such a hearing and that the bill passed. So what I would like to see us do is to, again, ask him to ask Adrian Adams, to ask the mayor, who, please, restore this funding. Not just this is what we think, but please do this.
Yeah, I think we can definitely make that specific ask. Move these forward. Bilal, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, just one more thing. I just like to think, Zara, I don't want to hold her past the time she's been here. I want to thank her for coming. Thank you, Zara. We'll be in touch. We'll definitely be in touch and send you our information to follow up in the language that we come up with to put on your site and your email list and all of those things. But I don't want to hold you up if you have to leave tonight. That was first. And then the second thing, Orion, is it possible? We would like to have an ask, and we're asking Donovan Richards, but an email is great, but can we get a meeting with him? And want SWAB get a meeting, or representatives from SWAB get a meeting, if it's virtual, in person, to go over this. This is how serious this is. I mean, emails are great. The email can be the backbone to what we are asking him. If we can have a meeting with him to go over our testimony of what we would like to see happen, of how important this is, and so he can understand, how we feel, but most importantly, how important this issue is to Queens residents. I think that's a very important ask. If we can ask the borough president for some time out of his schedule to actually go over this with him.
Yeah, definitely. We can definitely do that. Yeah, great point, Mary. Opening a dialogue, what questions he has for us, us asking what his positions are, and working to make those asks. I mean, we can be asking and sending, but obviously leveraging anyone who's on our side to make asks as well is super helpful. Vanessa.
Yeah, Susan spoke to this a little bit earlier, and what I want to say is that as individuals, we all have different capacities, for the amount of advocacy that we will do. And as a SWAB, we want to make sure that our response is pointed and uses our channels very effectively. For those of you who might have the time, the energy, as Susan was starting to tell us about talking to DSNY directly. As an individual, there is a way to submit comment to the commissioner. I haven't, this could be my own negligence. I haven't seen a statement from the sanitation commissioner about the proposed cuts. As personally, I think they feel particularly brutal for a program that's, I think, now over 30 years has received funding. Yes. Yeah, over 30 years, and staff that has worked side by side with sanitation staff for many, many years, and as integral parts of communities and as of their host sites. It's really it's really disappointing, and I think that type of messaging is probably good to send directly to DSNY if you do have that time and that energy to do so.
Do you have the details? And if you don't have them now, we can send them out afterwards, but just how individuals do that? I mean, we as a SWAB can obviously do things, but for individuals,
so I'll find it and pop it in the chat. There is like a email the commissioner feature. So I'll share it. Yeah.
That's perfect. I want to move us on to some things to vote. We do have a quorum. I'm going to pop this link in the chat here just to make sure that you've been counted if you're a member. But we do have a quorum. So there's a couple of things that I want to do. Yes, so we're talking about the Save Our Compost rally. There's one tomorrow, as well as the 6th or the 7th. I don't
Six, Ryan.
Perfect. So we've been asked to officially endorse it as a SWAB, as well as if folks are interested in speaking. That was also something that was offered to us. So what I am proposing and will officially be moving, just fixing the language as I speak because I was under the impression that the tomorrow hearing was no longer happening, but it is. So the motion that I'm making is that the SWAB endorse the Save Our Compost Coalition press conference and rallies, as well as take the position that the cuts to community composting and outreach program should be restored. So I'll put that in the chat, but that is the motion that I'm making if someone wants to second.
I second.
Perfect, thank you. And so we can open that to a discussion. I think based on the conversation that we just had, it seems like there's nothing formal for working with the People's Plan. And that's a more general coalition anyway, so we can continue to share information and whatnot. But with the Save Our Compost being specifically related to solid waste and composting, and there was a specific ask to officially endorse it, that's why we're limiting to this. So if people have comments and if people want more information, maybe Bilal, you can talk about what the two rallies are, and the logistics are in the chat, but if you just want to quickly cover what's going on with that.
Yeah, so tomorrow, all the compost projects are coming together with Save Our Compost and the members of the community to raise the concern about community composting being eliminated. That's the breadth and brevity of that one. And the one with Sandy Nurse is a very important one as well, because as she's the chair of the sanitation committee, she is spearheading that one. So that one's probably going to get a lot more press there. Not saying tomorrow's not, but more likely that will garner a lot more attendance and from the press and things of that nature. So they're equally as important for participation, for you to encourage, if you can, come out and support them, spread the word at least on social media, through your community boards, your civics, encourage people to actually come out to these rallies, because this is a way that a message can be set to the council, about why community composting should not be eliminated. So definitely let's support these initiatives. And Sandy Nurse is one of our allies in the council, one of our biggest allies in the council. So we definitely want to try to show out in numbers for that one as well.
Great, thank you. So any comments or discussion on the motion? Great. Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, come off mute and say aye.
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 CB4 aye. CB4 aye.
CB12 aye.
Any noes
2 aye.
and abstentions?
CB5 aye.
Great. Okay, so the motion carries. I'll reach back out. I as Bilal said, everyone is obviously welcome and invited to attend. We'll notify them that we are endorsing them. They were asking for the speakers for the December 6th. So if you're interested in speaking at the rally, let me know, and I'll connect you with the organizers for that. They'd asked if there was anyone from SWAB that wanted to speak. But at the very least, everyone is invited and encouraged to attend if you're able. And we'll also let them know that SWAB is endorsing. The other point that I wanted to make, and Mary, if you want to give more detail, but basically what we're planning is for the city council hearings on this, the SWABs are drafting an all SWAB testimony for responding to this. So what our plan is, because everything's moving very quickly, it's hard to have things in time for these meetings. What we have is there's a committee meeting tomorrow, November 30th at 5:30. A joint meeting with the Environmental Justice Committee, the joint SWAB and Brooklyn SWAB Legislative Committee, to draft testimony. Everyone's welcome to attend that, and I'm putting the Zoom link here. I'll make sure. Sorry, this. I will. That's where the testimony will be drafted, and then the plan is that afterwards we'll send that out with a Google form to vote yes or no on whether we endorse it. So tomorrow is the committee meeting. If you're interested in helping to draft that testimony, it's largely going to be what we've already written to send, to the People's Plan, for example, as well as this new, like, what we just passed. But Mary, yes.
I just wanted to say that I have already sent out to the QSWAB listserv the link for the meeting tomorrow, and just a brief description of what we're doing, which is to draft this testimony.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So yeah, so the meeting is tomorrow, and then keep an eye out for an email with another Google form to vote with the final version. And if you have comments and aren't able to attend, feel free to email me, Mary. Just let us know, and we'll pass those along as well. Great. So the other item here, let's see. All right, let me just. So we have our plan with cooperating with the People's Plan. There's no formal process or aligning or anything with that. We'll just continue to share information with each other about opportunities. We're officially endorsing the Save Our Compost rally, and we'll be drafting city council testimony.
Excuse me, Ryan, is there
Yes.
another vote? Is there another vote getting ready to take place?
The only thing that I had left to vote on was the October minutes. But if someone had something else, then we definitely could. But that was the only other thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Just making sure.
No, definitely. Thank you. Great. Okay, so then I'm going to make a motion to approve the October minutes.
I
Is there a second?
second. I Bilal, second.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any comments on the minutes? Great. So we'll go to a vote. All in favor of approving the October minutes, say aye.
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 Before I.
DV5 aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Wonderful. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. That was a lot of information, and covers a lot of what the committees have been working on. If there's anything else that a committee wants to share, let me know, and we can make space for that now. Legislative, environmental justice, communications, anything. Keep an eye out for emails. I'll be sending out information where we don't meet in December for the holidays, but committees may be meeting, i.e. tomorrow, for example. So keep an eye out for emails, but we won't have a full SWAB meeting next month. We'll meet again in January. But there may be committee meetings. We'll be sending out the Google form for that vote. Great. Let me see. That was everything. The only other things that I had, as we're sharing resources for individuals, we've the 2 rallies. There's also information, and I think Bilal, you shared this. If not, I'll send out an email afterwards. But there's a phone banking specifically for Save Our Compost. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can sign up to make phone calls, as well as, I'll put this in the chat because I don't think we've shared this yet, the Grow NYC petition, which is for individuals to sign as well. That's another thing that individuals can do. Is there any other, yeah, and I'm going to go through I'm just seeing this comment about past emails. I'm going to go through the chat after this meeting, pull out all the links and send out an email, because I know that there's been a lot of information, a lot of dates, a lot of links. So I'll make sure to compile that and send that out, so that everyone is on the same page, as well as for folks who weren't able to join tonight. Is there any other new business announcements, anything folks want to make before we close for the night? Thank you all so much. This is a lot of information. It's very hard to keep up with everything that's going on. I really appreciated hearing from Zara tonight. I have been trying to figure out who has the power to do what in all of this. It's all very confusing. So I think this was a really productive meeting to even just keep track of what's going on. And I think we have some great next steps for how we're going to continue this work. So with that, I'll move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Wonderful. Is there a second?
Second.
Beautiful. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
So we will adjourn. Thank you all so much for everything y'all are doing.
Thank you so much. Good night,
Night.
everyone. Stay
So,
safe.
good night.